Hey everybody, today on the Charlie Kirk Show, we go through the massive trillions of dollars they're trying to spend in Washington, D.C. We talk about Russell Brand. We also talk about how the IRS might be willing to look at your bank account at any time. And I ask the question, is anyone in the Biden regime, does anyone there actually understand how business works? Does anyone actually ever run a business themselves? That and so much more. Email us your thoughts directly, freedom@charliekirk.com. If you want to support our program, you can do so at charliekirk.com/support. That's charliekirk.com/support. We are deeply appreciative. We have the most amazing supporters and listeners. I want to thank David from Marion, North Carolina. Thank you. Kim from Knoxville, Tennessee. Thank you. Barbara from Massachusetts. Thank you so much for supporting us. Hal from New Hampshire. Thank you. Mary from Matthews, Georgia. Thank you. Jennifer from Bakersfield, California. Thank you. Lori from Franklin, Tennessee. Thank you. Valerie from Farmington Hills, Michigan. Thank you. Cheryl from San Diego, California. Thank you. Mary from DeBary, Florida. Ashley from Salem, Indiana. Thank you. And Tracy from San Clemente, California. So look, the significance of this, everybody, is that we're able to hire staff and keep this program strong and bulletproof despite all the attempts to cancel us, take us off air, and to punish us. You guys keep us strong. You guys keep us growing at charliekirk.com/support. If you want to get involved with Turning Point USA, go to tpusa.com. That's tpusa.com, where we play offense with a sense of urgency to win the American culture war. Start a high school chapter, start a college chapter at tpusa.com. That's tpusa.com. Email me directly, freedom@charliekirk.com. I love hearing from you. Buckle up, everybody. Here we go. Hey everybody, this episode is brought to you by my friends at ExpressVPN, expressvpn.com/Charlie. Secure your device, anonymize your online activity, protect your action online. expressvpn.com/Charlie. Help our show out by also helping yourself. Protect yourself. expressvpn.com/Charlie. The generals are now testifying in front of the House of Representatives, but there's something else that's happening in our military that is incredibly important that we need to talk about. I'm a pheasant hunter, not a professional pheasant hunter, but I do enjoy pheasant hunting. I was actually pheasant hunting in South Dakota last week. My goodness, this feels a lot longer ago than that. And when I was in South Dakota pheasant hunting, and anyone who pheasant hunts knows this, there's a strategy called flushing, where you use dogs. I grew up with a German short-haired pointer, and you would send the dogs out in the fields, and they'll work the fields. They'll find the pheasant, and they will provoke the pheasant to then leave the field, fly in the air, and then bang, you have a chance to shoot the pheasant. Flushing out requires not just the identification, but the provoking of the pheasant out of the field and up into the air. Now, for those of you that know, that have shot pheasants, you then call hens and roosters. There's some farms where if it flies, it dies, but hopefully you're not shooting hens. And if it's a rooster, hopefully you will shoot it. A lot of fun. Pheasant actually tastes pretty good in a soup. But the strategy of flushing is this idea that you need to not just find the pheasant, you need to provoke it, identify it, spot it, and then bang, you could take it out. This very same strategy of flushing out the pheasants is happening, metaphorically, of course, in how Joe Biden is handling the federal vaccine mandate in the military. Joe Biden wants to have people that are conservative, strong-willed, independent thinkers identify and get flushed out of the military as if we were shooting pheasants in the field in central, South, or North Dakota to be able to take them out. What better way to be able to identify the people that are free thinking, that are conservative and Christian of the military, than to have them identify themselves? Now, you could draw your own conclusions as to why Joe Biden would want to identify those people. Tucker Carlson made an argument last evening, Cut 64, where he said, this is a plot and a ploy to identify the sincere Christians in the ranks, the free thinkers, and the men with high testosterone levels. Play Cut 64.
The point of mandatory vaccination is to identify the sincere Christians in the ranks, the free thinkers, the men with high testosterone levels, and anyone else who does not love Joe Biden, and make them leave immediately. It's a takeover of the U.S. military. How many children were sacrificed to Satan because of the vaccine? The slide reads, apparently sarcastically. Then the presentation proceeds to list the so-called tenets of Satanism, which are taken straight from the Temple of Satanism website. So here you have the United States Army doing PR for Satanism.
And that's not sarcasm. That's a real thing that was used in the United States Army briefing documents to try and push forward the vaccine. Cut 65, Dan Dalloway, U.S. Army veteran, talks about the Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller story. Now, we covered the story of Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller yesterday, and we will continue to, of this Lieutenant Colonel from the Marine Corps who spoke out, was given a final gag order warning, and has now been put in military prison. Dan Dalloway, a U.S. Army veteran, he joined Tucker Carlson and pointed out the current administration and regime is ending America's armed service members' ability to think for themselves, using it as a means to gerrymander the organizations that keep us safe. This is nothing new. The Biden regime would love nothing more than a weakened and emasculated United States military. Play Cut 65.
Because you'd have to be crazy not to agree with the administration, right? And that's the message that's being sent to America. It's not only are we right, not only is the government right and the administration right, not only are you wrong, but you're not entitled to accountability. You can't think for yourself. And if you try for either one of those things, we're going to throw you in jail. That's the message that's being sent right now. It's incredible. For the last few years, the left has continuously chipped away at all of the institutions that protect America, you know, the military, the police, masculinity itself. And you got to wonder where they're going all this. Now they're using all the division they've created to basically gerrymander the ranks of these institutions, the Pentagon and,
right.
and the police services and things like that.
It's actually brilliant if you were trying to weaken the country, which of course Joe Biden is doing at a remarkably dramatic pace, where Biden and his regime and his team of cronies, they know that there are certain problem childs in the military, problem doctors out there. So instead of doing the exhaustive work of having to identify them yourselves, make them self-identify. How do you do that? You push forward the vaccine in such a tyrannical, authoritarian, unprecedented way that naturally 15 to 20% of people are going to say, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. I have some understanding of how tyranny works. My father grew up in the Soviet Union, or my friend got killed in Vietnam. I'm like, hold on a second, what exactly is this? Aha, you're the one that thinks for yourself, purge him. For those of us that study Soviet history, we know about the Red Terror. The one aspect of the Red Terror that most people don't realize is how long it lasted. In Soviet Russia, it was a campaign of political repression and executions carried out by the Bolsheviks. It was 4 years, from August of 1918 all the way up in 1922. You see, when someone assumes as much power as this regime has, and Biden has, they don't play nicely with others. Debate, dialogue, discourse, or discussion is something that they're not interested in. So therefore, they do what every autocrat does. Purge. Remove. Get the scalpel out. Find them. Flush them out of the fields. But first you have to find out who they are. And that's the biggest question, isn't it? Who are the troublemakers? Who are the problem children? Well, in the Soviet Union, they were able to find out who these people were through informants, through what people were writing in their private journals. In the Soviet Union, there was anywhere between 50,000 to 200,000 executions on behalf of the party and the Bolsheviks. And that was just the beginning of the mass slaughter of what the Soviet Union did to their own citizens. And the reason why we have seen, and we will see this only intensify in our country unless we push back against this immediately, is because tyrants' tricks, the tricks of a tyrant, are fierce but limited. The tricks of a tyrant are not endless. The tricks of a tyrant are purge your opponents, lie repeatedly, identify who the political dissidents are, purge them mercilessly, rinse, repeat. It's that simple. And what we are now seeing in the United States military is we don't want actually the finest fighting force in the country. Instead, we want an obedient civilian occupying force that will be willing to do what we want them to do for the reason I think you can fill in the gaps. Is Joe Biden executing an attempted beginning stages of a red terror on his own citizens? We're going to play some more tape where you'll see all of a sudden, well, we already have Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller that has been put in prison. We see now the imprisonment of the people that were participating and took selfies on January 6th. We used to say this is something that third world countries do. We need now to say that's got to stop being said. This is what America does, because the regime does it until we're going to stop them. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, Fiat, Kia, and models like Pacifica XT5, it is seemingly impossible to stock all the parts you need in a traditional storefront. One reason to repair and maintain your cars is to save money that you can then use for other important things like mortgages or food. Why would you choose to spend 30, 50, or 100% more for the exact same auto parts at a chain store or a new car dealership? I'm telling you right now, when you go to rockauto.com and you get the welcome box, competitors' regular prices for a random part. Chain stores have different price tiers for professional mechanics and do-it-yourselfers. Though rockauto.com's prices are the same for everybody and reliably low. Rockauto.com always offers the lowest prices rather than charging prices based on what the market will bear like airlines do. RockAuto.com is for everybody and does not require memberships or account login. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go to RockAuto.com to shop for auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. That's RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Best of all, prices at RockAuto.com are reliably low, and same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Charlie Kirk in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. How are we supposed to interpret celebrities coming out who were once on the radical left and now are saying things that were and are very obvious? Well, Russell Brand, who is a comedian, he's pretty fair on most things. He's all over the place. No Trump fan, though, at all. He has now come out and he has criticized Russiagate. Now, I'm saying this for a reason because we have a new episode out with Kash Patel that I encourage all of you to listen to. But if you want to listen to, in my opinion, the best analysis of the origins of the Russia investigation, of Peter Strzok, of Lisa Page, of where this all came from and where we are headed, I'm telling you, Kash Patel, who is being targeted by every major institution on the left that you can imagine, he breaks down how John Durham is building a criminal conspiracy case against the deep state. It was compelling. It was detailed. I pushed him on a lot of different things, and that's exclusively on the Charlie Kirk Show podcast app of Kash Patel. It's one of my favorite episodes we've done in recent times. And it's all around this topic of who is going to be held accountable for what was done back in the 2016-2017 timeframe with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page spying on a presidential campaign and hoping to get away with it. Well, Russell Brand now says, well, this is all from the Clinton campaign. Russell, the great Sean Hannity has been saying this on his program for literally the last 4 years. But better late than never, I suppose. Play cut 56.
The world moves so fast, there's almost no time for history. It seems like years ago that we were hearing that Trump was colluding with Russia, that he wouldn't have won the election without Russia, that his whole presidency was a kind of Putin plot. Well, there's now serious evidence that it was the Clinton campaign and Hillary Clinton acolytes that were directly involved in the generation of what has proven to be a conspiracy. Untrue. Think about how much media you watched. Me, a person who I would think, broadly speaking, is from the left, a liberal, certainly not a Trump supporting Republican, with respect to those of you that are, I find myself in awe, gobsmacked, flabbergasted and startled by these revelations that Russiagate was a Democratic conspiracy.
Russiagate was a Democrat conspiracy. Now, it's just amazing, though, how so many of these media personalities, they truly live in these self-created bubbles and vectors, where all he was hearing was that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. None of us actually believed it. None of us actually, we all knew that it wasn't true, but it kind of goes to this deeper point, which is if we are not getting our message out to the desired targeted audience of people like Russell Brand, who's a foreign citizen, but whatever, meaning someone who can influence public opinion, then are we really doing our job? We knew from the beginning that this entire idea of Donald Trump being purchased by Putin and blackmailed by the Kremlin was nonsense. Yet still to this day, there are millions of Americans that think that Donald Trump is bought and paid for by the Russian government. Still to this day. When in reality, it's Joe Biden who's approving, or the Biden regime that is approving Nord Stream 2, the preferential pipeline going into Germany, which highly and preferentially benefits Russia. But I want to cover the $3.5 trillion spending package. I want to cover what's in it, and I want to get into detail about the IRS. There is a story, there is a component of this new spending package that everyone needs to be made aware of how the Internal Revenue Service is about to get an unprecedented amount of power to be able to access your bank accounts, see your transactions, and to be able to control the financial flow of information in our country. Not to mention, in the $3.5 trillion bill, which we're finally getting a chance to read for the first time, is a component that would allow the federal government to fine businesses like Turning Point USA up to $700,000 through OSHA if they do not comply with vaccine mandates. What is going on in this $3.5 trillion bill? Well, I am pleased currently, and I'm waiting to be disappointed, that Mitch McConnell is holding the line. He says this is dead on arrival. We are not doing this. The debt ceiling needs to be raised, according to the Democrats. They don't have the votes for that. The infrastructure package has now been put in jeopardy, and the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation Build Back Better bill is also in jeopardy as well. Biden has several simultaneous issues on his hands. Did you ever read the fine print that appears when you start browsing in incognito mode? It says that your activity might still be visible to your employer, your school, or your internet service provider. How can they even call it incognito? To really stop people from seeing the sites that you visit, you need to do what I do and use ExpressVPN. Think about all the time you've used Wi-Fi at a coffee shop, a hotel, or even at your parents' house. Without ExpressVPN, every site you visit could be logged by the admin of that network. And that's still true even when you're in incognito mode. What's more, your home internet service provider can also see and record your browsing data. In the United States, they're legally allowed to sell that data to advertisers. ExpressVPN is an app that encrypts all of your network data and reroutes it through a network of secure servers so that all your private online activity stays just that, private. ExpressVPN works on all your devices and it's very easy to use. The app literally has one button. You tap it to connect and your browsing activity is secure from prying eyes. So stop letting strangers invade your online privacy. Protect yourself right now with the VPN that I trust at expressvpn.com/Charlie. Use my link at expressvpn.com/Charlie to get 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/Charlie to learn more. $3.5 trillion is just one of the bills that is being pushed forward. The Democrats are on the ropes. Just to give an idea of the political consequences of the southern border crisis, there was some polling that was done yesterday. Do you approve or disapprove of Biden's handling of the Mexican border? 4% of Republicans, 4 approve. I'm amazed it's that high. Out of independents, 78% disapprove. 76% of all men disapprove. 66% of all women disapprove. 58% of all blacks disapprove of the handling of the southern border. So there's a massive political consequence to what's happening on the southern border. Inflation? Oh yeah, inflation is real, everybody. We predicted it here on this program, and a year ago or so, if you guys go back into the archives of the Charlie Kirk Show, you guys can do that at charliekirk.com or on the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. We did multiple podcasts saying inflation is coming. And I'll never forget a lunch that I had with a couple very good friends who are very smart. And I said, inflation is here, inflation is coming. They say, Charlie, come on. Inflation is not coming anytime soon. We have an undersupply of dollar bills. I said, wait a second. You are creating 8 trillion new dollars, breaking today. Just to give you an idea, $1.46 trillion of Fed Reserve's repo usage today, an all-time record on the way to $2 trillion. And then you have an economy that's largely shut down. So you have productivity decreasing, dollar bills increasing. What is that usually going to be an equation for? This is one of the reasons why Jeff Bezos, his net worth as of today is $198 billion. Jeff Bezos is worth $198 billion. Whereas before the pandemic, it was almost $100 billion, nearly doubling his net worth. Now, the markets are getting rattled for a variety of different reasons. Inflation spike is real. Bloomberg.com. Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, which, by the way, we will do a podcast on the Federal Reserve. I know that interests a lot of people, of how the Federal Reserve is really running our country's economy, money supply, and otherwise. Where Bloomberg.com says, Powell says inflation spike won't lead to new inflation regime. Interesting. Inflation won't lead to inflation. Things are getting more expensive, and productivity is now being put in question. The market is off it was off 550 points yesterday. I don't know how the market's doing today. Changes in real time. We don't cover the market a lot. It's up 87 points. It's normalizing a little bit. We don't cover the market just because it's quite honestly not very interesting and not as important. But it's interesting in this sense that the inflation crisis, the southern border crisis, the Afghanistan crisis, what is going well right now for the Biden regime? And do they actually even care? That's the thing that I'm kind of waiting for them to say, like, when are you guys going to like course correct a little bit? Adjust or adapt? So there are only 2 explanations. The first explanation is they know they're going to lose power in the House of Representatives and probably the Senate, and they are going all out. It's like the guy that gets the 6-month cancer diagnosis from the doctor. Like, hey, you're going to be dead by Christmas. Like, hey, might as well live it up, I guess. Do everything I've always wanted to do. Spend trillions of dollars, keep the borders wide open, give money to the Taliban, hand out things for China. I'm not going to be in power in 6 months, so who cares? Or the other side of it is they are so arrogant, they are so self-righteous that they think no matter what happens, they might momentarily lose the House of Representatives, but the long bend of history will always go towards justice. Well, Democrats are currently so distracted by this reconciliation bill that the bipartisan infrastructure package, the con job that too many Republicans voted for, the green energy con job that made Pete Buttigieg the infrastructure czar, which isn't passed yet, thankfully. They are all tied to Joe Biden, and they are now putting Mitch McConnell in the driver's seat. I have to say, Mitch McConnell's handling this very well. Mitch McConnell is holding the line, and he is refusing to give the Democrats what they want. So the Democrats are now proposing to ram through this massive budget as they will continue to run deficits approaching World War II levels. $4, $5, $6 trillion of annual deficits. So there's a lot of different competing theories. Another theory is that they know that midterm elections are usually bloodbaths for the incumbent party. So they want to screw up stuff so badly that maybe the House can go red for one chamber. They can control moderate Republicans to try to still be in control and then win it back because the country will still be in such shambles and they'll win it back as a mandate to win it back. That's one theory. But you hear these people, Pelosi, Psaki, all saying that the $3.5 trillion will cost $0 because it will be paid for. Play cut 76.
As I said to the president, and I heard him say, this is a $0 bill because it's all going to be paid for with taxes on the wealthiest corporations and the wealthiest individuals.
It's not about a dollar amount. The dollar amount, as the president said, is zero.
Some have expressed publicly that they're not comfortable with the 3.5, even though zero costs $0.
We talk about price tags. It is zero price tag on the debt. We're going to pay for everything we spend.
Now, of course, that's a lie. The Associated Press says that it will add $1.4 trillion to the debt. But this is a very basic question of economics, which is it'll cost zero. Extracting capital from the economy and allocating it towards absolute garbage is not cost zero. At some point, you have to use that extraction. Now, there's no love lost here for raising taxes on Jeff Bezos. The guy's worth $200 billion. Now, he pays very low taxes because he knows how to use the loopholes. He knows how to game the system. But the real question is, why is it that our political leaders are so economically illiterate when it comes to this idea of a dollar in the private economy or a dollar in the state-run economy? A dollar in the private economy is by definition more efficient, will do more to spur and encourage economic growth. And, of course, there are externalities, but to say that it will cost zero is, of course, a lie. And they know it. In fact, the cost could be lower economic growth. The cost could be small businesses that are forced to now let off workers. And I say it's just on the wealthy, but here's a little news notice about the wealthy. They will find a way to exempt themselves from this. They'll go buy solar panels to put on buildings they never occupy. You know who's going to get crushed? The everyday man. The carpenters, the welders, the restaurants. Those are the people that are going to get crushed. I want to play some more sound here about the ongoing negotiations around this multi-trillion-dollar spending bill. Because this right here is kind of the most important, this is the climax of all legislative debates that are happening right now. Joe Biden has been unable to get his legislative agenda passed. And the mandate he had was to try to heal and unify the country. Whereas you look right now, the country is more divided, more severed than ever before. The borders are completely wide open. Where is Biden actually going to be able to put points on the board? We've played this tape before. Let's play it again. Let's play cut 17 of Pramila Jayapal saying we need to pass the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill first because they know that if they get the bipartisan infrastructure package, they'll tank the reconciliation bill. Play cut 17.
So that's all the stuff that's in the Build Back Better Act, what we're calling the reconciliation bill. And our point is just we're ready to vote for both. We are excited to vote for both, and we will vote for both, but we need to actually get the reconciliation bill done. That was what we said 3.5 months ago, Jake. Yeah. And so, our belief is that we'll get there. We're very close, but we have to get to that reconciliation bill first.
A major part of this bill is to strengthen and increase the funding of one of the most corrupt and dangerous organizations on the planet, the Internal Revenue Service. Proposed in the bill was to give the IRS access to your bank accounts to be able to see all the information of your accounts holding more than $600. Now, this is probably unconstitutional. It's probably unwanted search and seizure, unwarranted search and seizure of your private transactions. The stated goal of this vast data collection is to uncover tax dodging by the wealthy. This proposal is not remotely targeted to that purpose or that population, a letter opposing it said. In addition to significant privacy concerns, it would create tremendous liability for all affected parties by requiring the collection of financial information for nearly every American without proper explanation of how the IRS will store, protect, and use this enormous trove of personal financial information. We believe that this program is costly for all parties and not fit for purpose. So yeah, basically, Biden can already listen to phone calls through Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants, which we go over in great detail on our podcast with Kash Patel. But now he wants to see whether or not you are cashing checks and whether or not you are paying your full amount in taxes. Of course, not about paying your full amount in taxes. Of course not. These people will not stop. Now, thankfully, the $600 looks like it's dead, and they are raising the threshold, but it should be zero. They have zero business at all whatsoever knowing the detail or the amount of the transactions in your bank accounts. We know exactly how this will work. If you're a Democrat donor, your bank accounts will never be monitored. If you're a Republican or a conservative donor, every transaction, every check, everything you purchase will be monitored down to a molecular level. We have never thought that Congress will be our salvation of our country. We just have to make sure it's not going to be the damnation of our country. And where we are right now, Republicans better continue to hold the line against this $3.5 trillion horror show. With the inflation crisis we have, the open borders we have. Now, that might mean that we might have to shut down the government. Some people say that might mean that we'll default on our debt. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Hillsdale College, the beacon of the North, the last college, the place of liberty and freedom. They have four purposes: learning, character, faith, and freedom. Education and faith thrive in freedom, and freedom requires an educated people, a people of good character, to preserve it. Hillsdale College has been providing the education needed to preserve free government for over 175 years. It continues to provide that education today, not only to its 1,500 undergraduate and graduate students, but nationwide through its free online courses, its support of classical K-12 charter schools, and its other outreach efforts on behalf of liberty. Hillsdale's Articles of Association, dating back to 1844, commit the college to preserving the blessings of civil and religious liberty through the provision of sound learning. This learning includes the Constitution. It includes the laws of nature and nature's God as described in the Declaration of Independence. It includes America's beautiful heritage of liberty that too often is falsely derided or denied. I'm actually going to be at Hillsdale College in just a couple days, and Hillsdale's motto is pursuing truth and defending liberty since 1844. It will continue to fight to live up to that motto, come what may. Check out the Beacon of the North, the place that is so beautiful you won't believe it. They have statues of Frederick Douglass, Winston Churchill, George Washington, Maggie Thatcher. Hillsdale College, the place where liberty and truth are defended. So check it out at hillsdale.edu. That's hillsdale.edu. I have a legitimate question. How many of the people that are actually creating economic policy in our country have ever employed a human being? That have actually had to go raise capital, risk that capital, and then go back to those investors and create value or create revenue? How many of these people have ever done that? We employ over 200 people at Turning Point USA. We employ people here on the Charlie Kirk Show. I'm intimately familiar of what it means to have to go without pay for years to make sure that your employees are paid and your company moves forward. Foregoing a salary, working through the night. How many of these people have ever understood how capital flows actually work? Anyone? Play cut 78.
Obviously, the president's commitment remains not raising taxes for anyone making less than $400,000 a year. There are some, and I'm not sure if this is the case in this report, who argue that in the past, companies have passed on these costs to consumers. I'm not sure if that's the argument being made in this report. We feel that that's unfair and absurd, and the American people would not stand for that.
What do you mean the American people? What kind of ridiculous statement? American people won't stand for that. So they will pass prices on to their consumers. It's happening already. It's called inflation. It happens naturally. What do you mean standing for it? They're going to march in the streets? Like what kind of, this only someone who is just a trained puppet, a trained apparatchik like Jen Psaki would think that economic pressure somehow devolves into political activism. Oh yeah, somehow people are going to march in the streets because of a 4% adjustment on coffee prices. No, that's already happened. Things are getting more expensive and people are going to go into debt and pay for it. They're not going to stand for it. You see, the people who are going to suffer the most are minorities and people that work with their hands and people that are actually in a middle-class lifestyle that are currently suffering under it. And so it really does kind of beg this question, and it does, when you just kind of wonder, which is, are these people intentionally trying to destroy the economy, or do they actually think that the American economy is something where, yeah, people are going to stand for it? It's an up or down vote. They have never employed a human being in their life. In fact, they don't even desire to be around people that have employed human beings in their life. In fact, this would be an interesting study, and we will do this on the Charlie Kirk Show. I'm going to go through the senior administration in the Biden regime and the people in the Biden cabinet and find out how many of them have ever run a business in their life. Not like some sort of stupid consulting thing where they had like 10 people. No, I'm talking about a legitimate business with capital overlays, with paycheck, like massive payroll, pressures of fulfilling those obligations. And Trump's administration was full of business people. Some of those business people actually wanted really bad ideas and bad policies. But there was this idea that we understand the pressures of what happens when you raise taxes belligerently, when you increase regulations with no sort of basis whatsoever. It crushes the common man, the middle class worker. Okay, I want to get to this tape here. I promised it. Cut 61. In Georgia, we have now found out that over 19,000 ballots were counted from a single Zuckerberg Dropbox over one weekend, but surveillance footage shows only 24 people dropping off ballots. How is this possible? And why is law enforcement not investigating it? Play cut 61.
I know of one Dropbox in Georgia that's being looked at. The Dropbox averaged 60,000 ballots a day, yet over Columbus weekend, 3-day weekend, 19,000 votes were counted, but surveillance shows that only 24 people went to the Dropbox. You can't have that kind of ballot harvesting in the state of Georgia, so we have to look into this.
Yeah.
What's happening in Georgia is a developing story. We're keeping our eyes on it, including the Arizona audit, which is a very important report that we covered in great detail that shows how the election itself was illegally conducted. We're going to keep our eyes on Georgia. Just to reiterate what he said, new evidence shows that 19,000 ballots were counted from one Zuckerberg-funded Dropbox over one weekend, but surveillance footage shows that only 24 people were dropping off ballots. So what exactly happened there? That's a good question. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Email us your thoughts, freedom@charliekirk.com. And if you want to support our program, you can do so easily at charliekirk.com/support. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. God bless you. Speak to you soon.
For more on many of these stories and news you can trust, go to charliekirk.com.